in the desolate expanse of an alien battlefield, where crimson skies bled into endless horizons, a solitary human soldier stood amidst the wreckage of war. The air was thick with the acrid scent of scorched metal and ionized particles, remnants of countless battles fought between species who barely understood each other's languages, let alone their hearts. Around him lay the scattered debris of advanced technology, crystalline weapons that hummed with residual energy, fragments of spacecraft that sparkled like broken rainbows under the dying light of twin suns. The soldier, clad in battle-worn armor bearing the insignia of Earth's United Defense Force, moved slowly through this graveyard of civilizations. His boots crunched against the strange, glass-like ground that seemed to pulse faintly beneath his weight, as if the planet itself were alive and wounded. Each step carried the weight of years spent fighting in wars he didn't fully understand, for causes that blurred into meaningless abstraction when faced with the sheer scale of destruction surrounding him. Above, the sky shifted colors in patterns that defied natural law, swirling with hues that no human eye had evolved to perceive. Strange constellations danced across the heavens, telling stories of ancient conflicts and forgotten alliances among the stars. The atmosphere crackled with unseen energies, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand at attention despite his exhaustion. It was here, in this realm beyond comprehension, that humanity waged its desperate struggle to maintain its place among the cosmos, a place it had never truly belonged. Through the haze of smoke and sparkling dust, she emerged from the ruins like a vision born of both dreams and nightmares. Her form glowed softly, not with harsh artificial light but with an inner luminescence that seemed to emanate from her very being. She was tall and willowy, her body encased in what appeared to be living crystal that refracted the alien light into cascading rainbows with each subtle movement. Her skin shimmered with opalescent tones, shifting between pearlescent white and deep amethyst as she approached, while her eyes, large and liquid pools of silver, held galaxies within their depths. Her hair flowed behind her like strands of captured starlight, each filament pulsing with its own gentle rhythm. Unlike any human royalty he'd ever imagined, she wore no crown or elaborate garments. Instead, her ethereal presence spoke volumes about her status. The crystalline structures adorning her arms and shoulders weren't mere decorations but seemed to breathe with her, expanding and contracting in time with her movements. Every step she took generated soft musical notes, as if the ground responded to her royal presence with its own symphony. What struck the soldier most profoundly was how her regal bearing contrasted sharply with the devastation surrounding them. While everything else spoke of destruction and chaos, she moved with an elegance that suggested peace and harmony were natural states of existence. Her presence commanded respect not through force or intimidation, but through an aura of ancient wisdom and profound sadness that radiated from her like heat waves in desert air. In that moment, standing amidst the ruins of war, she appeared less like a princess and more like a celestial being descended from another dimension entirely. "Human," she called out, her voice weaving through the charged atmosphere like a melody played on an unfamiliar instrument. The soldier turned, his weapon instinctively raising before he caught himself, lowering it as recognition dawned. Despite her alien nature, there was something inherently familiar in her expression, an ache he'd seen mirrored in countless faces during his tours of duty. Her approach wasn't threatening. Rather, it carried the tentative grace of someone reaching out across an unbridgeable chasm. "Why do you not touch me?" she asked, her words forming perfect English yet carrying nuances that defied human speech patterns. The question hung in the air, heavier than the gravity of this alien world. "Is it because I am different? Because my flesh is not like yours? Or perhaps—" Her voice faltered, and for the first time, the soldier saw genuine vulnerability in those galaxy-spanning eyes. "Perhaps you fear what might happen if you did." She extended one delicate hand toward him, fingers ending in crystalline points that sparkled like dew-kissed spider silk. The gesture was unmistakable, yet laden with complexity. In all his military training, nothing had prepared him for this moment, this impossible intersection of protocol and primal connection. His mind raced through regulations, cultural sensitivity briefings, and combat protocols, but none offered guidance for responding to an alien princess extending herself so vulnerably. The space between them seemed to warp and stretch, filled with centuries of interspecies misunderstandings and missed opportunities for connection. Her hand remained suspended in the air, trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of expectation. The soldier felt his own hands clench involuntarily at his sides, torn between instinctive caution and an overwhelming urge to bridge that gap. The silence stretched taut, broken only by the distant hum of alien machinery and the occasional crackle of atmospheric energy. "You look at me," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried across the distance. "And you see other. You see danger. You see enemy." A single tear traced down her cheek, refracting light into miniature rainbows before vanishing into the crystalline network adorning her face. "But we are more alike than your kind wishes to believe. Your blood flows red, mine flows blue. Yet both carry the same weight of loss, the same burden of survival." The soldier swallowed hard, his throat dry despite the humid alien air. He wanted to speak, to offer some form of comfort or explanation, but every word felt inadequate in the face of her raw honesty. Instead, he found himself taking an involuntary step forward, drawn by a force more powerful than military discipline or species loyalty. The princess noticed his movement, and her features softened with hope that quickly darkened to sorrow. "I have watched your kind for cycles upon cycles," she confessed, lowering her hand but keeping it extended. "Your captains and generals, they speak of conquest and territory. But I have seen your soldiers, the ones like you, look at my people with curiosity, with wonder. They want to understand, to connect. Yet they hold back, just as you hold back now." Her voice broke slightly on the last words, and she looked away, focusing on some distant point where two suns met in fiery embrace. The soldier felt his chest tighten, recognizing truth in her words. He remembered moments when he'd caught glimpses of alien life, not through scopes or targeting systems, but through quiet observation. How many times had he wondered about the creatures they fought, about the lives they led beyond the context of war? And how many times had he pushed those thoughts aside, labeling them weakness or distraction? Now, standing before this embodiment of everything he'd been trained to consider foreign, he understood that these questions had never really left him. They'd merely been buried beneath layers of conditioning and necessity. "I don't understand," the soldier finally managed, his voice rough from disuse. Your royalty. Your people would never allow." "My people," she interrupted, a bitter laugh escaping her lips like shattering glass. "My people sent me here as a gesture of peace, knowing full well the risk. They called it a diplomatic mission, but it was exile dressed in pretty words. Just as your leaders send their youngest warriors to die on foreign worlds, claiming it's for honor and glory." She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the subtle vibrations emanating from her crystalline form. "We are both pawns in games we neither started nor can end." The revelation hit him like a physical blow. All this time, he'd assumed she was here as some sort of ambassador, protected by legions of guards and advisors. Instead, she stood before him as alone as he was, perhaps even more so. Her isolation wasn't just physical, it was cultural, emotional, existential. No wonder her voice carried such depth of feeling, such raw exposure of soul. She had nothing left to lose, while he still clung to his training, his orders, his identity as a soldier. "But why reach out to me?" he asked, his confusion bleeding into frustration. "Of all people, why take this risk with someone who could just as easily—" He cut himself off, unable to finish the thought. The idea of harming her, of destroying this fragile moment of connection, felt suddenly abhorrent. "Because you're here," she whispered, closing the remaining distance between them. "Because despite everything, you haven't raised your weapon. Because your eyes—" She reached up, hovering her hand near his face without touching. "They show me the truth you try to hide. That you're tired. That you want this war to end as much as I do." The soldier felt trapped in a web of conflicting emotions, each strand pulling him in different directions. His military training screamed warnings about maintaining distance, about preserving operational integrity. Protocol dictated that any interaction with alien entities, especially those of royal or diplomatic status, must remain strictly professional and controlled. Yet standing before this luminous being, her very presence challenging every preconceived notion he'd held about enemies and allies, these rules felt increasingly arbitrary and cruel. He thought about the countless briefings he'd endured, the hours spent memorizing alien physiognomy and behavioral patterns. Never once had anyone mentioned the possibility of shared pain, of mutual exhaustion. The princess had spoken truths that resonated deep within him, truths he'd long buried beneath layers of duty and obligation. The realization that she too was a pawn in a larger game, just like him, created an uncomfortable mirror reflecting his own position back at him. His heart pounded in his chest, caught between the drumbeat of war and the rhythm of something far more ancient and fundamental. The desire to reach out, to make contact with this alien being who understood his weariness better than his own comrades ever could, battled against years of indoctrination. The space between them seemed charged with potential energy, like the calm before a storm. Every fiber of his being yearned to bridge that gap, to prove that connection could transcend species and conflict. Yet hesitation rooted him to the spot. What if this was a trap? What if her vulnerability was merely a sophisticated tactic? These doubts warred with the undeniable authenticity of her tears, the genuine sorrow in her voice. The princess waited patiently, her extended hand trembling slightly, offering herself not as royalty or diplomat, but simply as another sentient being seeking understanding in a universe bent on division. As the soldier wrestled with his internal conflict, the princess began to sing, a haunting melody that seemed to weave through the very fabric of reality around them. The notes resonated with the crystalline structures adorning her body, creating harmonics that danced across his skin like electric currents. Without conscious thought, his fingers twitched in response, recalling memories of music from Earth that had once brought him comfort during lonely nights in space. The song told a story older than their current conflict, older perhaps than both their species. Through the alien cadences, he understood themes of unity and separation, of cycles of destruction and renewal that mirrored the rise and fall of civilizations throughout the cosmos. Her voice carried the weight of countless generations who had watched their worlds burn, who had sent their children to fight wars they couldn't comprehend. Each note pierced deeper into his resolve, unraveling the carefully constructed barriers between soldier and sentient being. Tears began to stream down his face, though whether in response to her song or his own breaking heart, he couldn't tell. The music activated something primal within him, bypassing language and logic to speak directly to the core of his humanity. Memories flooded back, faces of fallen comrades, promises made to families he'd never see again, dreams sacrificed on the altar of interstellar politics. The princess's song gave voice to all this accumulated grief, transforming it from private burden to shared experience. When the final note faded into the charged atmosphere, leaving behind silence heavy with emotion, the soldier found himself swaying slightly, as if still caught in the music's embrace. The princess's hand remained extended, trembling more noticeably now, her eyes glistening with unshed tears that reflected entire nebulae within their depths. Between them stretched a bridge of sound and understanding, fragile yet undeniable, waiting for the smallest gesture to transform potential into reality. The moment hung suspended, charged with possibilities that transcended their immediate surroundings. The soldier's breath came in shallow gasps, each inhalation drawing in more than just the alien atmosphere. It carried traces of the princess's song, of shared sorrow and unspoken hopes. He realized with startling clarity that whatever decision he made in the next heartbeat would ripple through realities far beyond this battlefield, potentially altering the course of interspecies relations forever. Their eyes remained locked, communicating volumes through silver galaxies and storm-gray determination. The princess's crystalline form pulsed with increasing intensity, responding to the rising tension between them. Around them, the battlefield seemed to fade into irrelevance, the wreckage and devastation transforming into mere backdrop for this pivotal encounter. The air itself seemed to vibrate with anticipation, charged particles aligning themselves along invisible lines of potential connection. Neither moved, yet movement was everywhere. In the subtle shifts of light through her crystalline adornments, in the way his fingers flexed against his palms, in the dance of reflected colors across the alien landscape. Time stretched and compressed simultaneously, each second containing eternity while hours seemed to pass in moments. The soldier felt the weight of choice pressing against his consciousness, each option presenting its own universe of consequences. Would his hand meet hers in a gesture that could redefine peace? Would he retreat into the safety of protocol and duty, preserving the status quo of conflict? Or would something entirely unexpected emerge from this charged encounter? The answer remained poised on the edge of becoming, held in suspension by forces greater than either of them could fully comprehend. The soldier's hand began to rise, trembling with the weight of worlds. Each millimeter of movement felt like crossing an ocean of doubt and fear, yet propelled by a current of something deeper, something ancient and fundamental that pulsed in rhythm with the princess's crystalline form. Her breath hitched as she watched him, her silver eyes widening not with anticipation but with recognition, as if she saw in his struggle a reflection of her own battles against isolation and despair. But just as his fingers hovered within reach of hers, a sharp crackle split the air, a sound that didn't belong to their fragile moment. Both turned instinctively toward the source, a jagged tear in the sky above them, glowing with unnatural light. From it emerged a vessel unlike anything either had seen before, a sleek, obsidian craft that seemed to drink in the ambient energy of the battlefield, its surface rippling like liquid shadow. The sudden intrusion shattered the delicate equilibrium they had built, pulling them back into the harsh reality of war. "Stay back," the soldier growled reflexively, stepping between the princess and the descending ship. His weapon was already in his hands, though he knew it would be useless against whatever power this newcomer wielded. The princess, however, did not retreat. Instead, she moved forward, placing herself shoulder to shoulder with him despite the danger. "You misunderstand," she whispered urgently, her voice barely audible over the growing hum of the ship's engines. "This is no ordinary enemy. This is hunger." Her words sent a chill through him, not because of their meaning but because of how she said them, with a reverence bordering on terror. For the first time since their encounter began, she looked truly afraid. The ship landed silently, its presence oppressive rather than aggressive. A hatch opened, spilling darkness onto the alien ground. From it stepped a figure cloaked in shimmering black fabric that seemed alive, writhing and shifting as though trying to escape its wearer. Its face was obscured by a mask of polished voidstone, reflecting nothing. Not the twin suns, not the fractured battlefield, not even the soldier or the princess standing defiantly before it. "You shouldn't have come here," the princess murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. Her crystalline adornments dimmed, their usual luminescence muted as if drained by the newcomer's mere existence. She reached out again, this time not toward the soldier but toward the figure, her hand shaking violently. "You weren't supposed to find us." The figure tilted its head slightly, a gesture so human it was almost mocking. When it spoke, its voice was layered, as if multiple beings were speaking in unison through a single mouth. "Princess," it intoned, each syllable heavy with disdain. "Your attempts at diplomacy are futile. These creatures cannot comprehend what we offer. They cling to their petty wars, their fragile egos, their illusions of control." It paused, turning its masked gaze toward the soldier. "And you who stand beside her, thinking your presence matters. Do you know why she sings? Why she reaches out?" The soldier glanced at the princess, searching for answers, but her expression remained inscrutable. Whatever secret she carried, they weighed heavily on her now, evident in the way her shoulders sagged and her luminous eyes dulled. The figure continued, circling them slowly, its movements hypnotic and deliberate. "She seeks salvation. Not for herself, but for all of you. Yet salvation requires sacrifice. Are you prepared to give what must be given?" "What do you want?" the soldier demanded, his voice steadier than he felt. He tightened his grip on his weapon, though he doubted it would make any difference. "Who, or what are you?" The figure stopped directly in front of the princess, reaching out a gloved hand to touch her cheek. She flinched but did not pull away. "I am the end," it said simply. "And I am the beginning. Your kind calls me many things: death, rebirth, annihilation, transcendence. To her," it gestured toward the princess, "I am both savior and destroyer. And to you, little soldier, I am inevitability." Before either could respond, the figure stepped back, raising one arm in a sweeping motion. The battlefield around them shifted, the wreckage and debris dissolving into swirling patterns of light and shadow. The crimson sky darkened to midnight, stars blinking out one by one until only the twin suns remained, casting long, distorted shadows across the alien landscape. In the silence that followed, the soldier realized something profound. The figure wasn't threatening them, it was testing them. "Why does it matter if I touch her?" the soldier blurted, surprising even himself with the question. His voice cracked under the strain of everything he'd witnessed, everything he couldn't comprehend. "Why does any of this hinge on whether I take her hand or not?" The figure froze mid-motion, its head snapping back to face him. For a moment, there was no sound, no movement, only the oppressive weight of its attention. Then, slowly, it lowered its arm. Because connection is resistance, it replied, its layered voice softer now, almost contemplative. To touch is to defy separation. To bridge is to reject division. And defiance. It turned its gaze to the princess, who stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Is dangerous. The soldier felt his chest tighten. He looked at the princess, really looked at her, seeing past the crystalline beauty and regal bearing to the raw vulnerability beneath. She wasn't just asking him to touch her. She was asking him to believe, in her, in himself, in the possibility that their two species could mean something more to each other than enemies or pawns. That belief, he realized, was exactly what the figure feared. We don't have to do this your way, the soldier said, his voice gaining strength. He stepped closer to the princess, close enough that their shoulders brushed. Whatever you're offering, whatever grand design you think you're part of, we can find another path. The figure laughed, a sound that echoed like thunder. Foolish child. There is no other path. Only endings. Only beginnings. Choose wisely. With that, it vanished, leaving behind only the oppressive silence and the lingering sense of inevitability. The battlefield returned to its former state, the wreckage reappearing as if it had never disappeared. But the atmosphere had changed. The air felt heavier, charged with the knowledge that their choices, whatever they might be, would ripple far beyond this moment. The princess turned to him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and dread. You still haven't answered my question, she whispered. Why won't you touch me? This time, when she extended her hand, there was no hesitation. The soldier reached out, his fingers brushing against hers. The contact sent a jolt through him, like static electricity but infinitely more complex. Colors danced across his vision, sounds he couldn't name resonated in his ears, and emotions he didn't recognize surged through his body. It was overwhelming, beautiful, terrifying, all at once. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the sensation faded. The princess gasped, clutching her chest as if struck. Around them, the battlefield shimmered, the wreckage dissolving into golden light. The twin suns blazed brighter than ever, bathing the landscape in warmth that hadn't been there moments before. What just happened? The soldier asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The princess smiled, though tears still streamed down her face. You chose, she said. And now we wait. For what? He pressed, gripping her hand tighter. Her smile faltered, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. For whatever comes next, she admitted. For the consequences of our defiance. For the beginning or the end. As they stood there, hand in hand, the battlefield transformed once more. The ruins gave way to fields of iridescent grass, swaying gently in a breeze that carried the faint scent of rain. Above them, the twin suns merged into a single orb of brilliant white light, casting the world in an ethereal glow. Neither knew what awaited them, but for the first time, neither was alone. The transformation of the battlefield into something serene and otherworldly was both beautiful and unnerving. The soldier tightened his grip on the princess's hand, grounding himself in her presence as reality seemed to shift around them. The iridescent grass shimmered like liquid starlight, each blade pulsing faintly with its own rhythm, creating a symphony of light and movement beneath their feet. The air smelled not just of rain but of life itself, fresh, electric, and brimming with possibility. Yet, despite the beauty surrounding them, an undercurrent of tension remained. The figure's words echoed in the soldier's mind, "Defiance is dangerous." He glanced at the princess, whose expression was a mixture of awe and apprehension. Her crystalline adornments now glowed softly, casting prismatic reflections across her face. She looked more alive than ever before, yet there was a fragility to her that hadn't been there moments ago. "What happens now?" he asked quietly, his voice steady but laced with uncertainty. "You said we wait, but for what?" "For that thing to come back." She shook her head slowly, her silver eyes reflecting the golden light of the merged suns. "Not just that," she replied. "We've disrupted the balance. By choosing connection over separation, defiance over submission, we've altered the course of something far greater than either of us can fully understand." Her words hung heavy in the air between them. The soldier felt the weight of responsibility settling onto his shoulders once again, though this time it wasn't the burden of war or duty, it was the burden of hope. Hope that their actions might lead to something better, even if they couldn't see the path ahead. As they stood there, hand in hand, the horizon began to ripple like water disturbed by a stone. At first, it was subtle, a faint shimmering that could have been mistaken for heat waves. But soon, shapes emerged from the distortion, figures tall and slender, their forms made of shifting light and shadow. They moved gracefully, almost ethereally, converging toward the soldier and the princess from all directions. "These are my people," the princess whispered, her voice trembling. "But they're not here as warriors, or diplomats. They're here because we've awakened something ancient." The figures stopped a short distance away, forming a loose circle around the pair. Their features were indistinct, constantly shifting between humanoid silhouettes and abstract patterns of light. Yet their eyes, each one glowing with the same opalescent brilliance as the princess's, were unmistakably focused on the two beings standing at the center of their gathering. One of the figures stepped forward, separating itself from the others. Unlike the rest, its form stabilized into something resembling the princess, though taller and more radiant. Its voice resonated through the air, deep and melodic, carrying an authority that commanded silence. "You have chosen unity," it said, addressing both the soldier and the princess. "In doing so, you have challenged the cycle. Tell me, mortal child of Earth, do you understand what you have done?" The soldier swallowed hard, his throat dry despite the humid alien air. He glanced at the princess, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. Turning back to the luminous figure, he spoke with a clarity that surprised even himself. "I don't claim to understand everything," he admitted. "But I know this much: war has no end unless someone chooses peace. Fear has no power unless someone chooses courage. And isolation has no meaning unless someone chooses connection. If defying the cycle means risking everything for the chance to build something new, then yes, I understand. And I accept the consequences." The figure regarded him silently for a long moment, its gaze piercing yet not unkind. Then it turned to the princess, who met its eyes without flinching. "And you, daughter of the stars?" it asked. "Do you still believe your sacrifice will be enough?" Tears welled up in the princess's eyes, but her voice was strong. "I never sought sacrifice," she replied. "I sought understanding. If my people and his can find common ground in our shared humanity, however distant, then no price is too great." A murmur rippled through the gathered figures, a sound like wind chimes caught in a gentle breeze. The lead figure raised one arm, and the shimmering field of grass beneath them began to rise, lifting the soldier and the princess onto a platform of living light. As they ascended, the world below transformed once more, the battlefield vanishing entirely to reveal a vast, interconnected web of luminous threads stretching across the cosmos. "This is the tapestry of existence," the figure explained. "Every thread represents a choice, a connection, a moment of defiance against entropy. Yours," it gestured to the soldier and the princess, "is among the brightest we have seen in eons." The soldier stared in wonder at the intricate network of light, feeling both insignificant and profoundly connected to something greater than himself. He realized then that their decision to touch, to connect, hadn't merely altered their immediate reality. It had sent ripples through the very fabric of the universe. "But what happens next?" the princess asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Will this change anything? Or are we simply delaying the inevitable?" The figure smiled, a gesture that seemed to encompass both sorrow and joy. "Change begins with defiance," it said. "And defiance begins with hope. What you have started cannot be undone. Whether it leads to salvation or destruction depends not on us, but on those who follow in your footsteps." With that, the platform of light began to dissolve, lowering them gently back to the ground. The luminous figures faded into the horizon, their forms merging with the golden glow of the twin suns. When the soldier and the princess found themselves alone once more, the battlefield was gone entirely, replaced by a tranquil expanse of iridescent plains stretching as far as the eye could see. For a long moment, neither spoke. They simply stood there, hands still clasped, watching as the merged sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and violet. The air was filled with the soft hum of unseen energies, a reminder that the universe was alive, breathing, and forever changing. Finally, the soldier broke the silence. "So, what do we do now?" The princess smiled, her tears drying as a sense of resolve settled over her features. "We live," she said simply. "We tell our stories. We teach others that connection is worth the risk, even when it feels impossible. And we trust that the ripples we've created will carry farther than we can imagine." He nodded, squeezing her hand tightly. "Together. Always," she replied. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared below the horizon, the stars began to emerge, one by one, then in clusters, until the entire sky was ablaze with their light. Among them, the soldier thought he could make out familiar constellations from Earth, mingling with alien patterns he didn't recognize. It was a reminder that while their journey had only just begun, the seeds of change had already taken root. Hand in hand, the soldier and the princess walked forward into the unknown, their steps guided by the hope that even in a universe defined by cycles of destruction and renewal, love and connection could forge a new path, one thread at a time.